Hello there, everybody. Welcome back. Sean, I'm so glad you're back.
Yep, I'm happy to be here.
You haven't been on for a few episodes. I'm sure everybody will be happy you're here. So, in the 14-week series we're doing right now, we're going through the chapters of Burn the Map, and we really hope that you'll get a copy of it because, we're going to go off topic. We're going to go, who knows where we'll end up in this episode? We really don't know. So get a copy of Burn the Map. But if you are just tuning in now, go back and watch or listen to the other episodes. And I think people should go back and repeat them, actually.
Yeah.
I had someone tell me the other day that they said, this book, Burn the Map, is one of those I think I'm going to read forever. I'm going to keep going back to. But I think episodes are like that too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, just having the ability to reference other people's shared experiences as like a guide point, and also having read the book makes the conversations that we're having here more relevant too.
I think you're right. That's a very, very good point. So we are on the chapter that I named Your Heart is Built for This. And where it came from was actually your godmother, Teresa, told me back when Jamie was in her addiction. And she said, a mother's heart is not built for this. And I remember thinking, she's right. I can't, this is too much. And with everything we went through with Jamie, I thought, my heart's not built for this. But then now Jamie's been murdered and I'm a good, happy person. I'm good. I mean, so that makes me think that hearts are built for more than we think they are. Right? I mean, I'm sure you thought you could never go through certain things. And then you go through them and, here you are.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you knew this, Sean, but the word courage, so the root word, the Latin word cor, means heart.
You have told me that before, yeah.
Okay, so what's crazy about that is, don't you always think like courage comes from, I don't know what I think, like thinking your way through it, right? Being strong that way. And then we think of the heart as really tender, right? The heart is that thing that breaks, because it does. It's that thing that feels sad. It's that thing that has emotion. But courage really comes from the heart.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think a lot of people understand that, like a reference to boxing, for example, an old thing that they used to say when a guy was just getting dog walked from the ring, just beat up, and he just kept coming back round after round. They'd say that guy's got a lot of heart. That was always so I think people understand that concept that he's not making an active decision. I'm going to go in there and be tough. There's just something.
There's something inside of you. Yeah. But maybe we think it's our gut or down here. We don't think of it like the heart because we think, oh, the heart's the tender side of us, But really, heart. You're right. Heart. Okay, think about like Braveheart. Right? It really does come from the heart. And so if that's true and that's the case, then we can't say that our hearts aren't built for it. Because I don't think God would allow us to go through anything if we didn't have the heart for it.
Yeah, I guess it's just a matter of whether you choose to accept that you can handle it or not. There's a lot of that. A lot of people will go through those kinds of things and think, I can't do this. And the more you tell yourself that, the more real it becomes.
Yeah, totally mindset. So we talked about mindset actually a few episodes ago. You should go back and listen to mindset.
Actually, to add on to that, you kind of don't really have a choice. When people say, I can't do this, you're doing it. I mean, the world is happening around you regardless of whether you want it to or not.
Yeah, okay, so I interviewed April, who's also in this book, and April had aggressive breast cancer 10 years ago. Thank God she's in great place right now. But she kind of had that same thing, like, okay, it's game on. Like you just said, you don't have a choice. But I do think you have a choice. Maybe you don't have a choice going through it, but you have a choice how you're going to come out the other end.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact movie or the context of it, but it's a line that I always remembered where a person says, if I go out, I'm going out effing screaming. He says, I'm not just going to lie down and get, stuffed in a barrel and disappear. I'm going out. I'm roaring like a lion.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think then this is kind of at the core of this whole book too. Speaking of courage, I think too many people think they're not courageous. They're not the brave kind of person.
Everyone's capable of courage, in my opinion.
Right, but so they look at someone like you, you're a really big, strong person, so of course you're not really afraid because you're big and strong, but you're afraid of other things.
They're also wrong about that, too. I've been in physical confrontation situations where I was scared and I just, had to do the right thing, and I faced it regardless. I'm not fearless just because I'm big. I can get hurt, too. Bullets hurt everyone.
That's a very good point. We know that for sure. So that's definitely such a great part of what we're talking about here too, but with the heart. I know you've heard me say this before with Jamie in particular, everything that I went through with her, I feel like, I know it sounds crazy to people because if we sat and talked about all the stuff just in her addiction, forget the fact that she was shot when she was 18 and almost died, and forget the fact she was murdered, just even in her addiction,
Okay.
that was that was hell.
Yeah.
Okay. It was just absolute hell. That's why I call it the roller coaster from hell. But you know what? I would do it again. I don't know what that says about me, but I feel like even knowing what I know and all the stuff I'd have to go through and all the heartbreak and all the just horrible stuff the beast did and all of the, this murder trial we're facing, like all of it, I would do it again just for the honor of being Jamie's mom. And maybe that sounds contrite, like, oh, well, because you're past it now. No, I'm in heartbreak forever. But I feel like I would do it again and I could do it again.
Yeah. One, I mean, trading the good memories isn't worth it when you really think about it. Like, you want to keep those memories, so you think back, yeah, okay, the last half of her life was a struggle, but the first half was really enjoyable, and you're choosing to see it that the first half outweighed the second half.
Yeah, I wouldn't have not wanted to have the other 15 years, and there were good times in between.
I'm going to break the fourth wall for anyone paying attention. There's a cat scrolling back and forth at my feet, and there's a chance that she's going to jump up on me. So if you see me looking down at the ground, I'm looking at the cat.
Yeah, that's Fiona, and Fiona's a little upset right now that we're in here. And what you don't know is that Rich is behind the camera, and he's going to actually step in here in a little bit. And so she's really upset that her three favorite people, well, she might like Nikki even better than some of us.
Yeah, she's allowed to bite Nikki and hurt her and not even get in trouble.
Right, yeah. So I want to say one quick thing before we bring Rich in, and that is, speaking of how strong your heart is. So, Donna,
Mm-hmm.
and Donna is one of the ladies that I met through this. My first book, Still Standing After All the Tears, is how I met her. And her son's been in addiction for many years, almost exactly the same as Jamie, same age and everything. And he's in really bad physical shape right now. And she called me up one day and asked me to help write his eulogy.
Mm-hmm.
Man, you talk about taking strength and courage.
Yeah, I know that it seems morbid, literally, but I think it's a really good idea because she was preparing herself mentally for the very real possibility that this did not end the way that she's hoping that it will, that could end the way it ended for us or so many other people. And the smart thing is, if he does get out of it, let's hope,
rip it up.
Then that's awesome. But if he doesn't, it's not an utter shock. She's preparing her heart, like you were saying, for the very real possibility of being broken. It's unfortunate, but it's smart.
I think she can also do a better job of it when she did, rather than...
Yeah, it's still going to be ungodly challenging if that were to happen. She'll have no idea how horrible it is and everything.
Oh, I've told her, Donna, you will be devastated. You can't, there's no preparing, not completely. Oh, by the way, I did an episode with Donna. I interviewed Donna a few months ago. You should go back and check that out because, and it's like you said, it's not morbid. It's not a sad episode. It's amazing to me, the resilience of the human heart. I guess that's what I'm saying. And
I think prepping yourself to say goodbye, I wouldn't say it's easier, but it at least gives you some sort of ability to say goodbye and closure or whatever. Like Pete's family, a friend of mine, his dad got cancer, beat it, it came back, and it took him, and he died like 3 weeks ago or whatever. But the family all got to spend quite a bit of time with him in his last year and change of his life, and they treasure it every day. And they were writing the eulogy, they were saying goodbye, and then when he finally was told you got 4 days left, and it was how long he lived, it doesn't make it easier, but they were all ready to say goodbye. They were preparing their hearts for the tragedy that was to come. So
yeah, you're right. I guess you said it earlier. It's just how you choose to face it.
Because you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
It's happening whether you want to face it or not. There's no...
However you want to get through it or not. So also there's
so many... the Happy Fun Times episode.
There's also so many different types of grief and loss and everything, and they're different for everyone. I've had somebody say to me, like, they were devastated, and their 80-something-year-old mother died, and I haven't lost my mom yet, and I know I'm going to be sad. There's no getting around it. but it's nowhere near. I know it already. It's not going to be anywhere near losing
Candle.
Jamie.
Yeah, won't hold a candle. Yeah,
No.
it's interesting because I have to remind myself. I forget who said it to me. Someone just said it to me the other day, but the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. So sometimes people like us who,
Good point.
like I've talked about all the tragedy that Rich has experienced when you think about in the grand scheme of all the things that he's had overall, much more than 99% of people when you take it to the totality of it. But he doesn't act that bothered by things. Well, because he's the worst thing that's happened to him is this and this and this and this and this.
Right, good point.
And then like my friend Mike, first funeral he ever went to, he was 22 years old and it was his like 85-year-old grandpa. I've never seen anyone sob so hard and so devastated. And I remember feeling a little cold towards it. I was like, you're going to like a 90-year-old funeral, dude. It's going to be okay. But
that's all he
had
knew.
never been to a funeral.
Yeah.
Never had anyone die. The worst thing that happened before that, his parents got divorced when he was like 19 and he was in college. And he was devastated by that, of course. But those are the two worst things that had ever happened to him up to that point. And it was hard for me to have the perspective of worst thing that ever happened to him was the worst thing that ever happened to him.
You know what I just thought of, because you mentioned that Rich's, totality, and of course that this part is not in the book, and I don't know whether he'll choose to talk about it, but he had a loss of a child in a different way besides Jamie, and I just thought of that just now. That I always thought, well, he knew how you felt, but he wouldn't know how I felt.
Maybe to some degree.
Maybe, I mean, it was much younger. It's different when someone's 30 years old and you've known them for 30 years, but doesn't matter. Anyway, so I thought now in this book, there's a section called Tragedy in Mayberry. And you know why I call it Mayberry.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it would be better than me talking with you about it or me talking with Rich about it. You and Rich talking about his experience, because you can relate.
Yeah.
Much more than I can. So we are going to do that now.
Hello, everyone. As mentioned previously, I'm going to be talking to Rich a little bit about, unfortunately, the shared experience that we have, and not all experiences, but one in particular. You heard the mention to tragedy in Mayberry. For quick context, Rich is from a small town called Dublin, California. It's not that small now. Now it's blown up and there's quite a bit of money out there and it's become a really popular area. But when he was a kid, I believe there was a school, two neighborhoods, and like one street and a stoplight, and that was about it. And it was, the typical American Pie middle class family. And Rich's brother, tragically, I think he was 14.
Yeah.
Was walking down the hallway pushing some AV equipment at his middle school and just hit the deck and died in a matter of 40 something seconds. They said his heart stopped. So something that my mom has always recognized is you and I have that shared experience. So the first thing I'm curious about, because I experienced this too, what was it like going back to school with all the people who knew you and your brother? Because you were only, what, a year and a half apart?
Yep. What was it like? It was bizarre because nobody knew what to say.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to Mayberry, we lived on the first street built in this new development, and to your point, the school is. I walked to school. It took me 7 minutes. The fire department was literally 30 seconds from the school where he collapsed,
Mm-hmm.
and got there in about 90 seconds and couldn't revive him.
Mm.
So going to school, I was in high school at the time. Nobody knew what to say. It was kind of bizarre. I didn't know what to say. And people avoided me because they didn't know what to say.
Yeah, which makes you feel even worse.
Yeah. It was.
Was it in the same building that you were going to, or were there separate buildings?
No, I was in high school. He was in.
Okay, so you didn't have to walk.
He was in 8th grade.
You didn't have to walk down the hallway that you
No.
passed.
No, I was in high school. He was in 8th grade.
But given that this happened in the early 1970s, 71, I think you said earlier.
Yeah.
My guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, would be there was a service for him. Everyone cried and talked about that. And then it was back to life, back to reality. You had to go back to pretending like everything's hunky-dory. Was that pretty?
Yeah. So the service
I know it's really hard to when you're trying to get words out and you're getting emotional. But one thing that I think is really nice is to remember that your brother passed 54 years ago, and you still feel this strongly about how much you love him. So, although it may not feel that way in this moment, this is a tribute to how important he still is to you all these years later, which is really nice for his memory. You know?
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Uh, so the reason I got a little choked up is the service was an open casket,
Oh, jeez.
and he was in his baseball uniform,
Mm.
and we were sports minded kids. Played little league. He was pretty good. I was pretty good. But to see him in his uniform, brutal.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Kind of almost trapping him in the memory of that little child in your mind forever. I would imagine that's. But one thing I would think, that was probably some of the times that he was his happiest in that baseball uniform. So that's one thing you can remember
Yeah,
is
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. He was. We played again, Mayberry. We played football, baseball in the street on our street.
Mm-hmm.
Because we literally had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 houses all across the street, and on our side of the street,
All the neighbors.
all had 2 kids,
Yeah.
all our same age.
Mm-hmm.
So we would play football, we would play frisbee, we would play baseball, we'd play hide and go seek. It was Mayberry RFD. The screen doors were open at night, or screen doors were there, so the front door was open at night till 10 o'clock at night. You wouldn't do that today,
No, yeah.
right? So yeah, it was truly utopia.
When it goes, we've talked about this with Jamie's death at 30. Now your brother Bradley at 14 years old
Yeah,
goes against the natural order of things.
yeah,
It sort of violates nature, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I could imagine that street was probably pretty different for a while after.
yeah. It was. It's a long time ago, but I know that the neighbors, the adults, checked on my parents often. The kids, again, what do 13 and 15-year-old kids say? They don't know what
Yeah.
there's not. I mean, it's kind of bizarre because it's as if it didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know,
Which is almost more challenging than it being a great big ordeal, because
yeah,
you, in your head, it was a great big ordeal, but it's 1971. No one else is making it a huge thing, so you just internalize that and have to carry on about your life. But obviously, it affects you very deeply to this day, and I can relate because I feel the same way.
yeah,
Someone will ask you the smallest little question about your sibling, and out of nowhere,
yeah,
that nerve gets touched, and you just.
yeah. Well, yeah, because the circumstances were a little bizarre because we got into a huge fight the night before.
I remember that, yeah.
Because who in their right mind thinks the next day your 13-year-old brother is going to collapse and die?
Yeah.
So I had a lot of guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the last time I saw him.
Mm-hmm. I can really, unfortunately, I was not particularly nice to Jamie the last several times I interacted with her. One of them, she had said something threatening to Grandma in a moment of one of her drug things, and I called her and literally said, I believe my exact words were, if you or anyone that you know does anything to Grandma, I'll find whatever crack den you're in, I'll kick the door in, and I'll kill everyone in the house. I believe was almost verbatim what I said to her.
Yeah.
To my own sister, and then.
Yep.
She asked me for money one last time, and I said something like, I would never give you money in your crackhead life, something like really, really mean like that.
Yep.
And then the last thing I ever said to her was, take care of yourself, or something like that. So I can understand that the last words you said were cross.
Yep.
But given that we are people who do believe in God, I don't think that Bradley or Jamie is sitting up there waiting for their, recompense for you when you get there. Like,
yeah.
You know, how dare you? You were a little kid and he was a little kid and you got into a fight.
Yeah.
You had no idea.
No, none. In fact, it's kind of bizarre because the dynamics of what transpired are somewhat different because my mother, um, I resented my mother for a couple of years after that because as a result of losing her youngest, she was overprotective of me.
Mm-hmm.
So as a junior and senior in high school, all my friends were having fun. They're going to parties. They're doing this. She wouldn't let me go.
You're expected to be perfect.
She wouldn't let me go because she was afraid something was going to happen. Because there's going to be alcohol. There's going to be driving. You're not going. So I resented her for that for years
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't astute enough to understand what she was going through.
Yeah. Well, there is still no playbook, but back then there was no all this buzzword mental health, right? That's the big thing everyone's talking about right now, which in some regards is really good, particularly people with PTSD being allowed to talk about what they're going through, and not just troops, but people in general. But back then, it wasn't like your mom sat down and said, "How were you feeling about all this? Let's get all these feelings out. Let's talk about this." I'm sure you didn't get
No,
3 weeks or a month off of school. You probably didn't go for a day or two.
no, I took a week off.
Yeah, and then
I was a good student, so I didn't have to turn in all the homework I missed, none of that stuff. But yeah, we didn't. Yeah,
well,
we didn't go to counseling. We didn't talk much about it. We didn't do anything to try and understand how the dynamics were going to change and what we were going to do accordingly. She just became so. Let me put it in perspective. So after the funeral, she put me in the hospital to have every test known to man done on me because, and I resented that too, but because there was nothing wrong with him and he died.
He was just born with a genetic heart defect,
Yes,
if I remember.
but which never came up in physicals or anything of the nature because what doctor would go 13 years old?
My grandpa Chips had the same thing and lived in as almost 80 years old. So and he played pro hockey. It just crapshoot.
Right. So as she aged later in life, I learned and became a little more sensitive to what she went through because it wasn't verbalized in the family dynamic, and forgave her for that.
Well, to that end, actually, it's kind of a perfect segue to one of the things I wanted to bring up was obviously this is not to say that there was no culpability from anyone, and you're a 15-year-old kid, you probably needed a little more emotional support than you received. But years later, when your mom was nearing the end of her life and was sick, you had cleared out her house and you found something in her house that she was taking that kind of like deeply upset you. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So she, well, interesting. That house you talked about was the house in Mayberry.
Yeah.
She was in it for 40, 30, 55 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I'd go up and visit her as she aged because she had a heart condition. And my father had passed and she'd been solo by herself for years. And there was a little bit of guilt because I didn't see her as much as I should have living in Seattle at the time. So I took her to the hospital to her doctor appointment. And I was looking at her prescriptions and she was taking antidepressants. And I thought, what the heck is she depressed about? I mean, she goes to bingo. She goes gambling with her girlfriends. She has a great life. She watches.
And
she goes to movies.
Very happy on the surface.
Very happy. Goes to movies and all that. So I asked her, while in the waiting room, I go, Mom, I was looking at all your prescriptions because the management of all those things is just ridiculous. You take so many drugs, one creates this side effect, so you take one to offset that. That has a side effect. So it's like, how do you? I go, what's with the antidepressants? And she looked at me and she goes, what do you mean? I go, why do you take the antidepressant? She goes, Bradley. I go, Bradley. And I looked at her in complete shock. So
40,
this many
46,
years later,
46 or 45 years later, or something like
this many years later, she still is depressed about what happened.
that.
And of course, you know, as a sibling of his, as a son of hers, hard for me to relate. I didn't bear the child, right? I mean, I miss my brother, but not like the mother who bears the child.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like I couldn't believe it, and felt like crap.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand.
Because you started realizing the support that you didn't feel like you received from her that maybe you didn't give back either.
Yeah, I could have been, in retrospect, a whole lot more sensitive, but there was so much resentment about my junior and senior year of high school not being able to do anything with my friends at night that I just, as a kid, I didn't know any better.
Yeah, and I think that forgiving yourself for that is pretty reasonable. I mean, you're both going through the hardest thing that you've ever been through to that point, and I don't know that you would consider anything harder than that.
No.
I mean, losing Jamie was one thing, but losing your little brother when you were a little kid was probably the worst thing you've ever experienced. And
yeah,
that's there is Mom always says there's no handbook, there's no playbook for that kind of thing, and it's true. There's just
no, there isn't.
And the biggest thing is giving your mom grace, but also yourself, because another shared story sort of along those lines. The third person who knows how we feel, my cousin Shawnee, who also lost her brother, I think 29 days before Jamie or something like that. Almost exactly 4 weeks. When Shane died, he was young too. Shane was 28, I believe. He was hit by a car and killed in the middle of the night, as you know. But Shawnee went around and talked about him, took a million pictures of him. She made every single waking moment on social media and everything all about Shane. And I was mad at her. Legitimately would talk shit about her behind her back and be like, you know, she's just being a weirdo. She's obsessed with it. You know, I was just so resentful of her doing that. And then fast forward 2 years, I'm randomly breaking down sobbing about Jamie. I'm handling it in the worst way possible, and Shawnee's really well adjusted and I realized she just talked it out to the point where she could process it.
Yep.
And that's something that we both missed in the you way more than me, but you realize that leaving it where it is not the
no, it isn't.
Not the answer. And the more you talk about it, it just gets a little bit less terrible to talk about each time.
Yeah, it does. Actually, yeah, it does. One of the oh boy, positive is the wrong word. One fond memory, I guess, is his legacy still lives on because at that school, there's an award given out every year in his name.
Oh, wow. I legitimately, for the people on camera, I did not know that till just now. First time I've ever heard that.
Yep.
What's it for?
Like the best athlete.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep. And
that's really cool.
So he was he had a strong personality. He was outgoing. He was gregarious. He was
bigger than you when he was younger.
Yeah, if you looked at he and I, you would never in a million years thought we were brothers. I was taller and thinner. He was shorter and more stocky.
Mm-hmm.
I had wavy hair. He had straight hair. He wore glasses. I didn't. I don't even, it's kind of interesting. People to this day will say, you look like your mom. No, you look like your dad.
Mm-hmm.
For Bradley, I don't know who he looks like. We were complete opposites as siblings, complete, in terms of how we looked.
Yeah.
But we both had athletic skill, mobility, senses of humor. We're pretty outgoing. He was more an extrovert than I. I was more of an introvert, but a lot of friends. So the funeral was tough because you don't go to a funeral where the majority of the people are kids.
Mm-hmm. I unfortunately have been to. I had a friend in elementary school who he died of brain cancer when I was in 3rd grade, I believe, and I remember that too.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, when you go to a funeral, it was for your grandparents, and you walk around and there's a lot of older people in suits and stuff, and to walk into a Catholic pew with the the big organs on the wall and everything, and you look around and half the heads in there are 3.5 feet tall. You're like, whoa! I do remember that being
Yep.
strange
Very.
because you aren't supposed to have. You're not supposed to bury your friends when you're
Right.
in middle school.
Right.
Just yeah, it's an
Right.
odd.
Very odd.
It's an odd thing, but
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, as far as the losing your brother, obviously, is just an absolutely terrible, atrocious thing. But is there anything over the years that has helped you process it, think about it? Is there anything you can think of that, like a memory you hold on to? Anything? I mean, that thing you mentioned before is pretty cool about the award. I had no idea.
Yeah. Actually, the thing that I remember the most is as kids. This is going to age the living daylights out of me. But we used to have.
Okay, we have the same amount of gray in our
We used to have. We used to have. This is obviously pre-digital, pre-mobile phones, pre all the stuff that exists today, right? We used to have an electric football game. So it was a field on an electric board that was probably 3 feet long, 2 feet wide, and it was a football field. And we had teams, and we would line our teams up, and you turn the board on, and they would move because it was electric. And he had every NFL team, every one of them. And I was the 49ers, and he was always the Raiders.
Oh God!
Because my dad and he had Raider season tickets, and this was my stepdad, who I consider my.
I didn't know he was a Raiders fan.
Yeah, who I consider
that might change my memory.
Well, it's interesting because he considered I consider my father. My genetic father was a 49er fan, so he and I had 49er tickets.
Okay.
So we used to play this electric football game all the time. Very competitive. And I remember that to this day fondly. Yeah.
Sometimes those are the most important things, is holding on to.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't make any new memories, but it doesn't mean that you can't cherish the ones that you have.
Yeah.
And those are helpful, in my opinion.
Yeah. And if I'd have known better, the one regret I had is he collected baseball cards. He had every single team, the team card, and every player on the team card for all of the American League and National League teams at the time. And I remember helping my mother clean the garage one day, and I threw them all away.
Oh my gosh.
And in retrospect, what those things probably would be worth today.
I know, we'd be sitting in leather.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. But anyway, yeah, so those are the memories I have. Yeah.
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 Is there anything else that you think that you'd want to share on that? That's
Well, I guess the only thing I would share is I often wonder what he would be like today if he'd have kids, if he'd have went to school, what kind of job would he have, where would he live, would he still be an avid sports fan, would we still fight, all those things. And those are questions that will never get answered.
Yeah.
I can just surmise what would have been.
Yeah, that's
Well,
I appreciate you sharing that, and it's obviously doesn't make it any easier. But one thing that I always think about is it's not goodbye; it's till I see you next time. So
yep, hallelujah. All right, thank you.
So I learned a couple things that I didn't know, and I've known Rich for almost 30 years. We learned a couple things we didn't know. You know what I think was really the most interesting thing of all, and you kind of touched on it, that they didn't talk about it back then. And I think maybe it was his family, maybe they're just how they were. But I also think back in the 70s,
it's definitely a sign of the times for sure.
Yeah, it wasn't the thing you just didn't do that. You just.
I can give you another example. My dad's little sister Tina, right? She died, and she was 46 or 47, something like that. She died, 15 years ago now? Something like that, maybe 16 years ago. But, so this was still in the 2000s. This was, this was 2015 or not 15, 2011 or something like that. Whatever. Anyway. And her parents were 70 something, and, all her siblings were in their 40s or 50s or whatever, they still don't hardly ever talk about her.
That's kind of just how they are. So I think there's two dynamics.
It's a generation though thing where, my grandpa was born in the 1930s.
Yeah.
He didn't talk about his feelings.
He just dealt with it.
At his daughter's funeral, he choked out the words, "I can't say anything." At Jamie's funeral, he made a joke because he was asked to make a comment about his granddaughter. It's just...
Didn't know what to say.
Yeah, I think it's just a sign of the times. Whereas her sons, David and Michael, who are younger than me, they're, in their early 30s, were able to sit around and talk about Jamie and my Aunt Tina and those things, because generationally that became more important.
Yeah, I think that there's a pendulum involved though too, Sean, because I think we also went too far with everything's about our feelings. And the thing is that you can control your feelings. Your feelings should not be controlling you. And I think we got too much of that going on these days, where it's just like, well, I feel like this and I feel like that. And, and I don't think it's healthy, but it's not healthy the other way either, where you don't process anything. You don't think about how it makes you feel. And I don't care if you're a boy, a girl, a man, or a woman. It hurts when you lose someone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not wrong to talk about it and process it. But I think you made a good point, though, how we talk about Jamie all the time. You talk about your Aunt Tina. We make jokes about things. And that's the real difference that I saw when I met Rich and I saw that black and white photo on the wall of Bradley, like frozen in time. And I remember I made a comment to Rich first time I was there. I said, wow, it's like your brother's frozen in time. And he got kind of upset with me. Like I don't even, he doesn't remember, so we don't really know why he did. I was meaning it like, wow, that's what it hit me, like he's frozen in time, right? But then that's it. They never said a word about him. The only reason I know anything about him is that I would pry it out of Rich. I would say, what was he like? And, and help him have these conversations. So I honestly think, Sean, what you just did with Rich is something that has never happened since his brother died.
Which is sad.
I feel like he just processed some of those feelings.
Probably made this process for him a lot harder. That's one thing I was just thinking. Easy is not the right word, but I can't think of the right word. But I think tragedy is easier to handle in today's society than it was then. And I don't mean easier, like I said, it's not the right word. But
because we have more tools to process.
Yes, and people are more open to those conversations. And, a man crying isn't, in the 1970s, if you cried in front of your friends, you got called names. Yeah. Now, if you cry, it's like there's a hand on your shoulder.
Yeah.
Hey, it's okay, kind of a thing. I think that just, it makes it easier to process tragedy in today's world than it would have 50 years ago.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I hope people don't feel like, wow, this is a little bit more of a serious episode. Not that everything we talk about isn't serious. It is. But this one was a little more emotional.
What do you mean? We're just talking about dead siblings.
Just much more emotional. So don't think all our episodes are like this, but at the same time, I don't want to apologize, because I think this is something that people need. To your point, I think that even today, Sean, even though it is more open, you and I talk about this all the time. Very few people in our lives ask us how we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's because we do podcasts. Maybe it's because I write books and we talk about it so much, and we've talked on stages and things like that. So maybe they just assume we're okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think this is so necessary, this kind of a discussion, because I still think most people do not know how to help other people or support other people unless they've been through it themselves, which is why we have so little support in what we do. Thankfully, we don't need a whole lot of support, but I think, we talk about this all the time. Well, they don't know what to say. Rich mentioned it when he was talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what to say. I feel like I don't know what to say is a good thing to say.
Yeah, and I think that leads into the courage thing, is saying anything when you are afraid to say anything is a big part of that. Like there's, even if it's the same old canned message. Like I remember when his grandpa died, he was resentful of anyone who sent him a message. People would say, "I'm so sorry for your loss. I know you loved your grandpa, da da da." He'd be like, "You didn't know my grandpa, and you didn't see me with him." And anyone who sent him that message, he was mad at him. He was like,
wonder why.
"This is none of your business, STFU," But I knew his grandpa had hung out with him, had spent time with him. So when I sent him a message, he felt more.
Well, see, now this is why people don't say anything.
No,
Unless someone
don't worry,
gets mad.
don't worry, I'm gonna land the plane. Little Johnny joke for you. He's a pilot. I said to him, it may feel that way now, but trust me, you're gonna remember later the people who didn't know what to say, couldn't say the right thing, but chose to reach out to you, and you're gonna remember the people that don't. And he told me years later that he realized he was being unreasonable because he was devastated.
Yeah, he was
just taking out his anger on whomever
Yeah.
he could. And he's like, I do actually now look back at that fondly and think this person chose to say something, this person, and then some people I thought would say something. So being afraid to say the wrong thing makes you say nothing, and what that tells the other person is that you don't care,
Right.
whether that's true or not.
But that's how it feels. It feels to me, nothing feels like you don't care. I feel like nothing is the only bad thing to say. I mean, assuming you're not saying something terrible. Anything supportive, including I don't know what to say, I feel like is a good thing to say.
Yeah, when we say anything, I guess let's like throw a little caveat out there. Like, don't send someone like a gif of someone like cheering or applauding after someone died.
Right.
That might
Not cool.
be the wrong thing to say.
Might be the wrong-
There is a wrong thing to say. Sorry.
We're assuming people know the
Yeah.
difference between
Yeah.
good and bad.
Yeah. Don't be wicked, you know.
Yeah, don't be rude. So, but anyway, thanks again for listening to this episode. Sean, thanks for joining me on this one. I mean, this is one of them that you could have, passed on because it's not one of our most fun episodes, but we do still manage to have a laugh or two, no matter what the topic is.
Only do things that are fun ever. I refuse to do anything else. I live at the McDonald's playpen
Yeah,
in the ball pit.
yeah, you wish. You know what? Back when you were like 4 or 5, you probably told me that's where you were going to live.
Yeah, that are like, you remember Zones? That was
Yeah.
where I used to go for my birthday.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone who remembers Zones?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could have lived there.
Yeah, you know what? And that's what's so funny you mentioned that because that's what Burn the Map's all about. Life rarely goes as planned. You rarely end up living in zones for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Okay, my friends. Next week, we are going to talk about the next chapter and the topics going along with that. And this chapter is called Unleash the Warrior. See you next week.